Okay, we are live. So just waiting for a few people to join, and then we will start. So let's get started with the session. So hi everyone. Today we are back with another episode of Expert Roundup, and today we have very special guest with us, ORION. She is inventory planning and cash flow management expert. So today's session will gonna based on inventory planning and cash flow management, how you can manage your inventory and how you can plan your cash flow so you don't get stuck at any point of time during your business, either it's Amazon or your e-commerce business. So let's get started, Orion. So I would like to share your introduction to all the members. We have people joining from across the globe, and let's get started. And
Good.
we have Ibad with us, who is our student, and Ibad is an Amazon seller as well. So let's get started.
Okay, do you want me to jump right in?
Yeah, I want you to jump right in.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Orion from Retail Adventure. Let me just take you through the slides first, and I'm going to jump right in. No introduction. You don't need to know anything about me.
The people want to know about you. You just have to give them the introduction. People really want to know about you, what Orion is, what Orion do. Like they are really
Okay,
interested.
I'll tell you the most important thing, and that is what I do for sellers, and I help them improve cash flow 50% and improve the inventory profitability. And let me just give you some of my knowledge right away. If it's valuable for you, then that's the best introduction I can give myself. And I'll start with the very, very basic. Our business goal is to turn revenue, and here's our revenue cake. And this example is going to be about Amazon. It is correct for every business. So you just have to replace the slices. Here's our revenue cake, and we want to turn it into profit, but we have to pay for inventory, and we have to pay for Amazon, and we have to pay for other suppliers, and eventually we're left with just this little silver piece left for us. Everybody else ate the cake, and let me turn on the pointer. And all we have left from this delicious cake of revenue is this tiny little piece, which is our profit. And that's the goal of the business, to turn revenue into profit and to grow it. We don't just want this little piece of cake. We want more, because cake is nice and profit is nice as well. So we have a couple of options to turn our revenue into more profit. One is to make the cake bigger, sell more, and get the same percentage of that as profit. But if we sell more, our profits will grow. Option number two is to grow the amount of cake we can get, the percentage of the cake we get. Our profitability is growing. And option number three, which I like the most, is do them both. Sell more, increase your revenue, and keep more of that revenue as profits. And that's really important for me to go through this as a baseline, because your inventory controls this very, very much. So in e-commerce or in retail business, we create that business process that we create revenue by giving somebody a product they want and are willing to pay for. And this is our race. We have three things that make us win the race for a sale. We have the best fit between our product and what the client or customer wants. We have the fastest availability. People do not like waiting. And if this is something interesting, please ask about it and I'll go into more details. And finally, it's the good price. And I specifically put it in this order because people always say, I need to have a good price, I need to have a good price, I need to have a good price, a competitive price. Actually, price is not the most important thing. If you have a really great fit between your product and the desires, needs, wants of the market, and if you can deliver fast, at least have them have the ability to press the buy now button right away and not know right away that it's not in inventory, it's coming soon. The wait between the moment they buy and the moment they get the product should be small. It's still less important than the ability to buy right away. And finally, once both of these have been fulfilled, you need to have a good enough price. And if you have all three of these, you can win the race and have the sale. But here's the thing. This means availability is our key because only what is available can sell. And that's even true for drop shippers. Even if you're drop shipping, there is no such thing as endless inventory. Somewhere, someone in the world has to have the unit you want to sell, or else the sale will fail. And the other thing we need to remember is that demand can expire, whether it's because the product becomes bad or the need has gone away. If I'm selling swimsuits and it's becoming winter in the place where I'm selling, the demand is expiring. If I'm selling a Christmas item after December 25th, my demand is expired. So if people want to buy now, I can't sell what doesn't exist. And I have to have it available before my demand expires. That means I need to hold inventory somewhere. Someone in the world has to hold the inventory for me to sell it. And in order to hold the right inventory, we need to know what is going to sell ahead of time. So we need a crystal ball. We need to know the future. But we can't. Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Nobody knew last year at this time that we're going into a pandemic. The entire world was shut down. People had tickets to go on planes to travel. People had plans for the full year, and everything fell through because we cannot predict the future, but we need to. And that brings us to forecasts. And let me explain my thoughts about forecast using an example. And of course, guys, if there are questions coming up, just stop me and we'll see if I need to answer right away or wait for them.
We'll wait for the questions and we will take questions by the end of the slides.
Okay, perfect. So here's an example of a forecast. So we have the 2019 actual data in blue and the 2019 forecast in orange. And this is, and I did this at the end of 2019. This is real data from a client. And I used his actual growth because I did it after the fact. I knew how much that company grew during the year. So if we knew at December 25th, 2018, that this is the growth expected for 2019, this is the forecast we would have had for annual sales per SKU. So each point here is a different product, and this is the annual sales for 2018 and expected annual sales for 2019. But what happened in reality? This is the forecast versus the actual sales for 2019. Now, the blue is the forecast we just saw in the previous slide, and the orange is the actual sales that each SKU had. And you can see that On average, our forecast is pretty good. Another remark I'll just make is that the SKUs are not ordered by name, but by popularity. So the best seller is on the left and the lowest seller is on the right. But here's the problem that we have with this. All these points where the orange actual is above the blue forecast represent lost sales because the market wanted this, but we had this. Now, let me explain what I'm meaning here. If they would have bought to forecast, they would have lost these sales. Since they didn't buy to forecast, they worked with me and bought in a balanced way. They had this inventory and they could capture those sales to know that they had this demand. On the other hand, for these items, here and here, the demand was lower than the forecast they would have forecasted. So if they would have bought to forecast, this represents excess inventory and this represents excess inventory. And even though the average is pretty accurate, the market isn't buying on average. Each and every one of us buys on their specific desires. And if what we really, really want isn't available, on the compromises we are willing to make. So this excess inventory can't compensate for, for this missing inventory completely. Maybe in a little bit, or maybe they'll just go and buy somewhere else because I let them down. So that's the problem.
Yeah, so I see there are two problems. One, at one point of time, the seller has less inventory and sales are like the predicted sales are higher than the inventory which he have. On the other hand, he has excessive inventory and sales are low. So with this graph, there are two things. One is excessive inventory and one is less inventory, right?
Yes, you have excess inventory and you have lost sales. Yeah. Now, again, I could do this because I was using actual data and pretending to forecast a year, I already knew how it behaved. When we forecast ahead of time, if we do it like here, when we only have this graph here, we don't know what's going to actually happen. We have to buy according to this forecast. And then when we have the actual sales, where you have these lost sales potential, if you bought at the blue line, you don't know how high above the blue line was your orange point. You just, because you have to stop at the point where you bought. You can't sell what you don't have. Okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. So that's against those points. And inventory has a cycle. We all know the cycle. You pay the down payment. Eventually, you have to pay for the rest of the inventory. You have to pay for the shipping and handling for inventory to come in from the production site to your selling point, whether it's Amazon, whether it's a 3PL, whether it's your garage. You pay for the storage, you pay for the marketing, and finally you start selling. And if you're selling on Amazon, the fact that you're selling doesn't mean you're getting money. You have to wait a little bit more for that as well. Eventually you start getting money. And after you finish your inventory, you finish paying for the storage and marketing on this shipment, you might still be getting a little bit of the money as it flows in. So this is the basic inventory cycle. But it also means that you have an inventory cycle cash flow. As this cycle starts at the 0 point, you don't have any expenses, you don't have any income, you start with the expenses. And you start occurring expenses and expenses and expenses for a very long time until finally income starts and you pivot this to become in a positive trajectory, but you're still in a negative cash flow for this cycle. This cycle hasn't even paid for itself until this point in time where we break even. We've made enough money to cover all the costs until this point. And only after this point in time do we start having profitable cash flow. So positive cash flow, more income than expenses on the cycle. And here's the point. If you're buying in the East, maybe in China, and selling in the US, maybe in Amazon, your cash to cash cycle adds up really fast. The time between this down payment and the end point of the cash recovery is between 200 and 250 days on a product sourced from China, based on my research that I did with sellers on this. 80 to 90% of this time, your cash flow is negative. Now, if the profit, this is the profit. This last point here is the profit. If your profit is big enough and you repeat this cycle several times within the year, you will eventually have a business cash flow that is positive, of course. The problem with this kind of cash flow cycle for your inventory is that you have a huge risk here. You have to go very deep down into pockets, so lending money or bringing money from your own resources before you actually start seeing the benefits. And this means your cash is tied up. If something happens here in the middle of the cycle, maybe an opportunity came up, your cash is tied up and there is nothing you can do other than commit to more risk, because this here, this lowest point, this is the risk level that you have in the cycle. And whatever you can do to bring this point up and this point to the left and shrink the cycle in any way reduces your risk and increases your potential to make a profit on the total business overall. So this is the information that I planned and created to share with you. If you want to learn more, there are two things that I can do to help. One is I have a free email newsletter that everybody is welcome to join, share it with everybody, of course. And the other is that I do have a course, which is the 30-day inventory cash flow challenge, where I go specifically with Amazon data deep down into the data, where to find the reports, how to analyze the reports, how to figure out what's your cash to cash cycle, how deep is it, where are you losing money, what can you do about it, everything. And the regular price is $789, but you have a special price for Extreme Commerce members, and this is a lifetime special price. This week only, it's actually lower. And this is the link to register and get these special prices. If you come in until Saturday midnight somewhere in the world, this is the price you're going to get, and after that the price will go up. So I've gone through most of the things I wanted to share with you today, and I'm open to questions. Let me stop the share of my screen, okay?
Yes, perfect. So, okay. So let's start with the questions.
Okay.
So,
Any questions that you have?
I'm looking at the questions that if someone has posed. I think we have few questions. Okay. Okay, so like I have few questions for you. So, what like for how long you have been working with Amazon sellers and like all these e-commerce businesses, like and how you help them actually in planning their inventory and managing their cash flow. So, what is the like how important this thing is? Number one, for any upcoming seller or for any seller who have been selling for like a whole lot of time. So because we in our platform we have Amazon sellers, so most of the people here they want to know like how they can effectively manage their cash flow because so whenever someone places an order in China, they need to pay 30% to the supplier as an advance so they can start with the production, and before picking the goods up they need to pay another 70%, and they need to pay 100% in advance to the freight forwarder so a freight forwarder can ship their goods to Amazon FBA directly to FBA. So with this cycle, like a whole chunk of investment gets blocked. So what is the effective way to manage this cash flow?
Okay, so you've asked several questions. Let me try and answer all of them.
Yeah.
I've been in retail inventory management for about 10 years now. I started wanting to work in the retail space, and I actually went and worked in a shop for a certain time. Just to get a hang of it, I like touching stuff. I like doing stuff myself before I tell people what to do. And I've worked with a retailer here and in a fashion retailer in the back office for a while as well. And then I realized that as much as I love retail, I like having data that is controllable, and that means e-commerce. The fact that retail is a little bit behind us. They don't know how many people came into their store and went out without buying. They don't know which items they picked up and put down. They don't know a ton of stuff that we in e-commerce know. And that helped me make the shift and decide that I want to be in e-commerce. And I've been helping e-commerce sellers for the last 4 years or so. And the first seller I've worked with big time, he sold both on Shopify and on Amazon. So I know both those platforms, and the boxes don't care, so I don't care either what platform you're selling on. But I have realized over time that the Amazon platform is harder and you need more tools to handle it because they don't think it's your data. They think it's their data, and they're not presenting it in the most flexible way. So it actually requires more analysis than other platforms.
Okay. So thank you for answering this question actually. So I we have a question from Aftab and he says, my question is what is the effects of COVID situation on online sales and managing all this inventory and everything?
Yeah, so there are a lot of effects, and they differ from place to place, of course. What we have seen in the US market is that, and in the UK and the European market, there is a big shift of people who were supposed to go and become online buyers at a later stage. They moved to buying online because the shops were closed, because they were afraid to go out, because transportation became harder. So online became stronger. The volume of online sales grew significantly during COVID, and probably it's not going back all the way. So my mother, who is not an online shopper and now started buying online because she didn't have any other choice, she knows it. She can't go back to not knowing it. And so she's
Yeah.
going to save and buy more stuff online when the shops come back. So the
Yeah.
volume, the cake, the e-commerce cake has grown. On the other,
Significantly.
significantly grown, yeah. On the other hand, a lot of sellers who were retail, brick and mortar sellers, and were saying, I don't need to go into e-commerce. It's too complicated for me. I'm doing well enough as I am. Couldn't sell in their store anymore and were forced to join the game and start selling online. And some of them are not classical online sellers. I know a lot of furniture companies that thought you can't buy a sofa, you can't buy a living room set without coming to the store and checking it out, realized they can't.
Yeah, so the penetration rate from past 3 years has gone significantly high. Back in 2017, there are not too many businesses which do both brick and mortar and online sales. But once this COVID has started in 2020, the penetration rate has increased by 40 or 50%, that most of the brick and mortar stores move to e-commerce as well, because they know there is an opportunity. If they stick with the brick and mortar till now, they are not going to make anything out of it. So there's a huge gap during this COVID. People focus like shift. Their focus is business. Focuses have shift to e-commerce more than a retail one, and I
Yeah,
think the situation is going to continue for next 1 year or so.
yeah, of course. But again, once a player joins a game and knows how to do it,
And
whether
he's going
it's
to
a
not.
buyer or a seller, there is no going back. And when brick and mortar stores that usually were not part of the e-commerce game came on, some of them have a very good financial stability. They have a long history in doing business. They come in and they turn out to be very good players. They have a head start in the e-commerce game. The third big thing that I have seen is a huge change in supply chain. When the COVID pandemic started, it hit the China market and immediately started impacting our supply lines negatively. There is a lot of negative feedback loops right now, pushing up the prices of shipping on air, in the air, or on sea, reducing the time, increasing the times it takes for goods to get from one point to the other. And
Yes.
a lot of sellers were exposed to how risky their supply lines are. And um, we need, you can't fix a problem in the middle of a catastrophe. Now that the catastrophe has re, re, is we're kind of finding a new normal. I don't like the words new normal, but we're kind of finding a balance that we can live with until the pandemic blows over. It's time to start looking at your supply lines with very, very uh, critical eyes and figuring out how to reduce your risk levels and how to have a backup system in place. Now,
Yes.
I totally get that a new seller cannot do that.
That's pretty
But
very yes.
but if you're taking a risk, at least know you're taking a risk and think about what you're doing. Don't just bash into that risk and oh, there was a risk there, I didn't know. That's the worst feeling in the world. I see a question. How can we
Yeah.
estimate exactly how much inventory should we keep in stock for more profitability? Oh, that's a lovely question. I love that. So here's the thing. Do you remember the cake and cheese analogy from the start? Well, I was lying. I'm sorry, but this is what your accountant tells you. Actually, there are expenses that aren't covered in that pie chart because the money we spend on inventory is not considered an expense, it's an investment. And usually, most businesses that I know have in their investment in inventory about the same amount of money that they have in their profit slumps. So they're basically at zero. And what does that is mostly the inventory buildup. So the fact that we bought stuff the market isn't willing to buy from us as fast as we planned. And the other part of this is the stockouts. The fact that what the market wants, we don't have. So the way to balance our inventory and improve the profitability is to balance the velocity of incoming inventory to the velocity of outgoing inventory. Let the market pull the inventory from you. You cannot do that if you're going to buy a huge 3 months order once every 3 months. You have to be more agile than that.
Okay, so we have another question like, how do you set up the right strategy for squeezing the cash conversion cycle? And what should be the right cash conversion cycle for kitchen niche? It is specific to Amazon, more on Amazon side for us, for someone who sells in a kitchen niche. And kitchen niche is very competitive. It has like big brands fighting in this niche. So what should be the right strategy for this kind of niche?
Okay, first of all, you always want your cash to cash cycle to be negative. And if it can't be negative, be zero. And if it can't be zero, be as close to zero as you can. And actually, Amazon's cash to cash cycle is negative. That means they get paid before they have to pay. Now, it's not realistic for a lot of Amazon sellers. So just have your eyes on that target, on that prize. And it's not niche specific. If your niche is very, very competitive, you need to focus on having your best competitive advantage. Selling what everybody else is selling at a better price isn't going to take you very far. Find a different competitive advantage. And how do you squeeze the cash to cash cycle? Is by planning ahead and reducing the times wherever you can and reducing the costs wherever you can. So if you can communicate with your supplier and don't ship all the inventory at once, but flow the inventory in. That means you don't have to pay for all of it at once, even if you do pay the whole down payment together. Just by dividing shipments up, try to get better cycle times. Be willing to pay for better cycle times. So if a Chinese supplier means that you need 10 weeks for production and 10 weeks on sea, and a local producer in Europe or in the US is willing to give you 7 weeks of production and 2 weeks for shipments, that can compensate for a huge price difference. So even if that is more expensive, it probably will be more cash effective and more profitable.
Perfect. That's a very good representation to this question, actually. So another one, what tips you can give to decrease the cash flow curve from both sides, keeping view your vast experience and analysis? Any resource or technique, please? Thank you.
Okay, it's very much the same answer. So I'll try to do
Exactly.
other things. The first thing is do not bleed money. And I have found several points where sellers bleed money. One is paying Amazon fines for excess storage, long-term storage, all those additional storage fees. They're a waste of your money. Do not pay for them. Number two is make sure that you have all your reimbursements covered to a T. Use a service. I actually always recommend using more than one service to do that. Don't do it on your own. Make sure that all the money that Amazon charged you and shouldn't have is returned to you. The third thing is do not stock out. Lost
That's key,
sales,
actually.
lost
That's a,
sales, lost. First of all, Amazon is going to fine you heavily for stocking out. But here's the thing: lost sales account for about 10 times more money than the cost of excess inventory. So you can make, and if you have more of the inventory the market more wants, you're going to sell more on the same investment, which means that after you take out the COGS, everything else is profit.
okay. Uh, we have another one, interesting one, which I like, from
Oh, I
Johnson.
like this question.
Yeah, I even like this one. A very good
Do
one.
I really consider if that brick and mortar retail is dying versus e-commerce? I've been hearing this claim for the past 10 years or so, and I'll 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 answer in a teasing way. Cinema didn't kill the theater. 3D, what you call it, didn't kill Disneyland.
Yeah.
Brick and
Yes.
mortar is experiential. You go to the mall not because you need aspirin and diapers, but because you want to go and get an ice cream and look at the shopping windows. And there are things you can't experience online. You can't try the new fragrance. You can't touch the silky linens. And you can't get a chocolate croissant on the way without anybody knowing it when you're shopping online. No, I don't think they have, they come one. I don't think brick and mortar is dying. I think it needs to change significantly. I think they need to realize that the world has changed. But I also know that the sickness that is killing brick and mortar has come with the sellers to e-commerce, because the one thing that is slaying brick and mortar is problems with inventory control, is the fact that they continuously end up with the wrong inventory. And we have that same thing in e-commerce. It's not bugging e-commerce as badly right now because e-commerce is younger. It's just a matter of time unless we change it and we fix it.
So the conclusion is e-commerce, like brick and mortar is not dying, but the business needs to change. They need to start with all the brick and mortar store. They need to start with e-commerce as well
Of course.
to cater the need of time actually. During this COVID, a whole lot of things has changed, and the businesses which shift their focus to brick and mortar or to e-commerce, they are the winners. So they get the opportunity to capture the ongoing or the traffic which is floating everywhere, and there are less seller to cater all the needs. So that's the right approach. You should do both in parallel. So I think Ibad has few questions to ask. Ibad, you can, and I'm gonna mute myself.
Okay, first of all, hello to everyone. My voice is clear.
Yeah.
Yes, Ibad.
Is my voice clear?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Yes, I can hear you fine as well.
Okay, so I've actually gathered some general questions which basically occurs in everyone's mind regarding inventory and cash flow management. So I'll come up with the first question. What do you think that what have you experienced basically and noticed while guiding businesses, that what basic factor or mistake should be kept in observation, or what parts the business lack management?
hmm So the first thing that I keep seeing is that as business people are very focused on profit, and the calculation is always if I get the biggest profits, my business will be stable and the cash flow will follow. Actually, it doesn't work that way. It works exactly the other way. You have to keep your eyes constantly on the cash flow and remember that you need to be profitable. But cash flow is what kills business. If you have a commitment to pay somebody and you don't have cash, the fact that the business is profitable isn't going to help you. A lot of businesses that go under and have to go bankrupt were profitable at bankruptcy, but they just didn't have the cash to serve their debt. So keeping your focus on cash flow and staying, you don't have to stay debt free. That is a good way to grow a business, but you always have to have a plan. How are you going to serve the debt? And the other thing is that we tend to focus on local optima. It's a limit of our brain that is natural. It's very hard to understand complex things where a lot of things impact one another. When we look at, for example, e-commerce, oh, it's very, very simple. You buy at X, you sell at Y, if Y is bigger than X, you made a profit. No, there's a lot of expenses going on during this process. And one decision can impact all of those expenses. And sometimes if you buy at 2X, you reduce all those little expenses along the way so much that you actually make more profits. So you have to look at your total cost and your profits and profitability more than the specific local expense. Because let's
Okay.
admit, we would all rather spend $50 and make $500 instead of spending $5 and making $100.
Okay, great. Ori. My next general question would be that sometimes e-commerce sites, especially when we talk about Amazon, they don't release all our payment at once when we are international sellers. What are your views on it?
Well, this is something that has been with business forever, payment terms. And you have to know in advance what are your payment terms going to be and make sure you know it. So it's not enough to do a general Amazon search and find out that Amazon pays after holding the money for 14 days. Make sure that your situation is going to be like that or different and plan for it. There are, of course, services that offer, wait a minute, I wrote it down because I knew I'd forget. They offer factoring, or basically they will give you the money right away. And then when Amazon pays, they will take that money and you have to pay them a small percentage. So they will give you 98% of the money. And when Amazon pays, they will get 100%. But you don't have to wait. So, and that's a really good service as long as you only loan the money once. So you can't have the factoring service and a bank loan on that same dollar because you're only going to get 98% of that dollar. You can't have 200% loans on it. And you need reserves. You need to plan ahead. If the fact that Amazon is holding onto your money is what's going to put you over the edge, your business
Okay,
is
so
too
you mean to say that we should have some chunk of money in case of emergency?
of course, or a plan for what you do. If you have the bank say, I'm always willing to give you a cash line. Okay, a credit line. Then you have a backup plan. But
Yeah,
you have to be planned and you have to know what, when, what, and why. And
exactly.
I know sometimes there are some situations where Amazon just stops paying. It's not just holding money. It's just it tells a seller from time. There are always stories about how Amazon closed an account and wouldn't pay the rest of the money in that account. If that's all the sources of income that you
Okay,
have, that's trouble.
yeah, we totally getting your point. Okay, so another question would be that by your experience, do you think that people lack management here in inventory and cash flow, considering it an easy part?
Um, what my experience is for inventory is that it's boring. It's not glamorous. It's not like PPC and video where you have this really, really fast gratification. If we start working on your inventory, we can double your profits, but it's going to take time. And it's not going to be like one day you come in and say, "Wow, I doubled my profit." No, one day next year your accountant is going to come and say, "What did you do last year? You made such a good profit." You're never going to feel it. You're never going to have that. Wow, my graph went like this. It's not emotionally satisfying. It's really, really profitable. Cash flow is a totally different story. I have my MBA. I didn't learn 1 minute of cash flow during my MBA courses. Only accountants learn cash flow, and they learn it from a different perspective than what we just talked. Nobody has ever told me, and I've been reading textbooks and learning management for many years now. Look and manage from the cash position. It's not what we were taught at all. So how would anybody know that?
No, I completely agree with this. So we have last question from one of our community member who's asking, what is your forecast for 2021? Is there is any formula to calculate close to accurate forecast for inventory management for this year? Plus, when the brand and seller is new in the Amazon market. So they are asking for your forecast for this year, 2021.
Okay, I don't forecast. I do not forecast. That's my. I create forecasts for clients, of course. I try not to call them forecasts. They are plans because here's the thing: it is mathematically proven. It's not me. It's proven mathematically that we can't predict the future in a good enough accuracy to make the decisions we're trying to make. It's not that we don't have the tools. I mean, they started working on these forecast algorithms before I was born, and I'm old. My parents were still waiting to get a phone line at home with phones that went like this, with the dials. Right now, I have a computer to put a supercomputer to put in my pocket. We've put people on the moon. There are cars driving without people holding the wheels in the streets in California and in other places in the world. And we still can't forecast accurately. So
Yeah.
it's not because we don't have good enough tools. Those tools do not exist. What we need is the ability to manage knowing that our forecasts aren't accurate. And let's go into the math a little bit. They're not accurate in a non-uniform way. If you are forecasting as a kitchen seller business, kitchen tool seller we had before, if you're asking how many of all my SKUs in the kitchen category am I going to sell the entire year, your forecast is going to be pretty good. But as we go down to the chef knife and the uh, this and that and the other, each one of them is going to be really bad because on average they come up very close. So what we need and what I do is the ability to take the high level aggregated forecast and break it down into actionable items. It's not a forecast anymore. It's a good guess. But if you do those good guesses much more frequently throughout the year, if you chunk down your decisions into smaller and smaller decisions and do them more frequently, you can constantly fix and adjust, and then you'll get the better results.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer for this question. I agree with you.
Yeah.
So we are wrapping up the session. Thank you so much, Orion, for being here, sharing a wonderful knowledge and experience, or
Thank you for
definitely
having
useful
me.
experience. Yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you, Ibat, for being here. And
Welcome,
thank you
welcome.
for answering all the questions which our member have
Yeah.
asked and giving them the detailed oriented answer. That's wonderful. I
Okay,
hope we
so
can have another one
let me
as
cut
well.
this minute. I
Yes.
see there are a lot of other questions. So I have my email at the beginning of the presentation,
Yes.
and if you
I can put your email.
I will put it and answer all the
Yeah,
questions.
I will put your email on the YouTube video link as well, so people can reach out to you if they have any particular question. But this is what I'm gonna do. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this session, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Orion.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure having you guys. Bye. Have a nice day. Bye.
Have
Have
a
a nice
great week,
day.
everybody.
Bye.
Okay, okay. Allah Hafiz.